Imagine yourself a monk of the Keepers of the Flame. After the events of the Breach quest, you renounce your faith, cast off the Dreamer, and retrace back your origins of martial prowess and elemental affinities. Now, you're an Invoker of the Elements and travel through raid class, destroying evil wherever it takes root. How's it going, guys? This is Kenny17, and that was my headcanon for my current League Star character, a Holopalm Trinity Invoker. As usual, we're prioritizing style over min-max, because hands are indeed the best weapons in POE2. With that being said, there are still some cool techs to discuss here, including a pretty frequent Trinity uptime without Painter's Gloves, which really helps cement the power fantasy as well as the damage scaling. As usual, I hope you enjoyed the 6-mod T15 mapping montage here, and we'll get into the details after. Cheers! I hope you joined the montage. As you can see, this build can handle 6-mod T15s relatively smoothly. However, with Delirium added or T16, things do get a bit dicier, as well as some more single target damage optimization still needed for late endgame contents. So for now, the build that was shown is in a mid-endgame state with roughly a 20 divine budget, and I'll discuss some key aspects of improvement later as well. First of all, what exactly is this build? In short, this is an Invoker Ascendancy Holopalm where we invest heavily into crit, elemental damage, and trigger spell damage to enable a Spellblade or hybrid attack spell archetype. During mapping, we rely on Ice Strike, Charged Staff, Repulsion, and Elemental Expression for clear. While during bossing, we rely on a Collapsing Horizon Quarterstaff and Rapid Cast on Crit Comet to burn down the boss. As mentioned, Holopalm for mapping is for power fantasy. I like to think that our monk finds the mapping mobs to be unworthy of his weapon. From a pure build optimization perspective, however, Collapsing Horizon Quarterstar will be a better option than Unarmed overall. As usual, the rest of this video will discuss this build from a mapping, bossing, defense, and future improvement perspectives, with Mobalytics link attached in the video description. If there are a lot of interest, I will also put together a leveling guide utilizing the new features in 0.5. For mapping, there are a few interesting techs that's worth mentioning. Let's start with the big one, Trinity. Trinity is a 100 Spirit Reservation skill that gives a maximum of 60 to 70% more elemental damage, depending on your gem level, the more balanced your elemental rotation is. To be more specific, Trinity tracks all your hits and the dominant elemental damage associated. For example, Ice Strike predominantly deals cold damage, Charged Staff predominantly deals lightning damage, and our Repulsion predominantly deals in fire damage. As an aside, physical damage components in those hits are ignored for Trinity tracking purposes. Depending on the dominant elemental type of ice, lightning, or fire, you gain a lot of resonance for that specific elemental type while losing a small amount of resonance of the other two elemental type. Resonance itself is more of just kind of like a score that tracks your elemental damage rotation, and the total resonance you have across all three elements effectively determines your total damage bonus. The resonance limit for each element is 100, totaling up to 300. And the more resonance you have, the more elemental damage Trinity grants. Ideally, if you're hitting the enemies in equal frequency of fire, lightning, and cold, then you'll have resonance of all three elemental type, maximizing your total resonance and damage. In contrast, if you're only dealing in one of the three elemental type, you'll effectively only have about 100 resonance instead of 300, therefore enjoying a much smaller damage bonus. This skill effectively encourages a quote-unquote balanced elemental damage type. So with the mechanic explained above, how do we actually ensure a good rotation of Trinity? Generally, in other Trinity builds, folks like to utilize Painter's Gloves, where all three elemental damage types are converted into equal thirds. Additionally, going this route requires a Painter's Glove that also grants equal amounts of extra damage prefix across the elements, because those are added after damage conversion. Lastly, because of the damage sequence calculation, folks also would need to avoid any of sources that gives gain damage as extra outside of the glove itself, such as Heart of the Well, support gems like Blazing Critical or Innervate, and other passive nodes. For this build, however, I wanted to see if a manual balancing would work better, simply because Hollow Palm's main weakness is already low base damage, and I'm really not a big fan of giving up the glove slot just for Trinity uptime consistency. From the montage, you can see that the uptime is definitely not 100%, but I'd say relatively high for us to enjoy the damage boost, as well as the quality effect of 15% increased skill speed when your total resonance is above 250, which is pretty significant. To achieve this Trinity uptime manually, I made sure there are at least 3 distinct attacks overlaying at all times, each with a different dominant elemental type. As discussed previously, for Ice Strike, most of our damage is converted to cold. For Lightning, we rely on our Charge Staff, and for Fire, I have a Heart of the Well Jewels with gain damage as extra fire, and pairing this with Blasphemy coupled with Repulsion, which is physical damage in nature, will end up with an extra fire component of the damage. There are, of course, other details in consideration, such as the fact that Elemental Expression will mainly trigger more cold and lightning because of our stats, as well as the fact that we want to make sure our gain damage as extra fire source does not overtake our lightning or cold damage components in Charge Staff and Ice Strike respectively. But all these details can be tuned with the proper use of fire, cold, and lightning attunement if needed, as well as Embitter support. All in all, there will always be a bit of variance during gameplay given the delta in the damage range between fire, cold, and lightning. And honestly, a lot of the tuning will just need running through maps to figure out with the support gems slotted mentioned above, and a lot of game sense and fine-tuning. Outside of Trinity, which, by the way, gives us a damage bonus for both our attacks as well as our Elemental Expression trigger skill, which is considered a spell, we invest mostly in crit hit chance and damage on the tree, which again applies to both attack and spells unless otherwise indicated. Combining our hideout crit chance along with charge regulation and blind effects during combat, our Ice Strike effectively have a base crit of 12% and a total crit chance of 97% while running Hollow Palm. Elemental Expression not triggering every hit is more because of the spell cooldown rather than the crit hit chance, which is a point of optimization if we want to make this build better. A final note for mapping: to further skill damage outside of Trinity and crit, we rely on this league's new Blasphemy and Repulsion tech. If you're not familiar, Repulsion is a new Kalguran curse skill introduced, where cursed enemy take a debuff stack called Fragility, and any subsequent hit will damage this stack to do extra physical damage as well as stun and pushback. Usually casting this requires ward, but slotting this into Blasphemy and turning it into an aura forgoes this requirement at the cost of 60 spirit. This will also automate the placing of fragility stacks on nearby enemies for detonation, while allowing us to skip defense penalties with Verizium Reforge. This pairs nicely with our build as an added extra source of damage, as well as a reliable fire resonance generator as discussed above. For For bossing, we revert back to a quarterstaff and cast on critical setup because serious health pool requires serious solutions. From the montage, you can see that this is the more lacking aspect of the build, with the key issue actually being mana sustain for CoC comets during bossing. Taking a step back and looking at the basics, we are using a Collapsing Horizon unique quarterstaff for our weapon set associated with bossing. Aside from the abysmal DPS, this quarterstaff is actually quite busted for an invocation build. The key affixes we're after here are the high base crit chance, which by the way can go as high as 20%, the quality of life for a skill trigger, which effectively reduces maximum energy by 50%, as well as the plus level for elemental skills, which slots perfectly into our Spellblade archetype, benefiting both attacks and spells. TLDR, this quarterstaff allows for a much quicker comet trigger during bossing, as well as giving some welcome plus levels for further DPS scaling. For CoC skill in particular, I have slotted in both Comet as well as Living Bomb. This allows us to generate fire infusion while raining down Comet to maximize our DPS. This is combined with Balanced Energy 2, Efficiency, and Concentrated Area for more damage and reduced mana consumption. Lastly, our Ascendancy node of The Soul Springs Eternal further complements our CoC energy gain during bossing and enables frequent Comet triggers. On paper, all of this should enable a pretty lethal combination that allows for very consistent damage, even with the Comet nerf in 0.5. However, in the actual bossing montage, you can see that the boss health is going down a bit slower than expected. The key issue here is our mana. Essentially, when you hit 100% energy to trigger Comet and Living Bomb, but if you lack the mana to do so, the energy counter will simply reset and nothing happens. With the Leech nerf in 0.5, we can no longer stack multiple Leech instances with builds that hit multiple times, but with each hit being relatively low in damage, which is a killer for our mana sustain. In the montage, I was relying on Osin's Oath slotted in on Ice Strike, combined with a suffix of Mana Leech on Ring, but this is more of a stop-gap solution. We'll discuss this more in the improvement section of the build, but I do believe the long-term solution would be heavier investment into mana efficiency and mana regen, including passives, runes, and even craftable affixes on gears, combined with some potentially super late expensive glove investment with suffix for Arcing Surge trigger on crit. Moving on to defense, the setup is pretty straightforward. Given the relationship between Hollow Palm damage scaling with hybrid evasion and energy shield gears, we are leaning exactly into that hybrid EV-ES. From the build intro datasheet, you can see that we have about 16k to 70k evasion rating in hideout, with about 10k in deflection rating and a 2.5k energy shield pool. This is not much, and the idea behind this build frankly is to burn out the mobs and boss before they do the same to you, so leaning more towards a glass cannon archetype. Generally in mapping, you'll feel a bit squishy, but will feel safer as your damage grows. The one thing to watch out for would be those pesky ground effects due to your relatively low health pool. Given the melee nature of Ice Strike, this can be usually avoided by playing smartly. As a general rule of thumb, do not dive bomb into the middle of a dangerous pack, pull out the dangerous rares away from the rest of the mobs, and apply a literal dosage of Gathering Storm to move from one side of the mob to the other while targeting key rares with nasty buffs such as Fizz damage increase, Mana Siphon, Invulnerability, while staying clear of the rest of the mobs. A final note on hybrid EV-ES. Once you hit around late 80 to 90 in level, you have a bit of passive point to play around with in terms of investing more into EV nodes or ES nodes. Given the nerf this leak to ES recharge, I decided to invest a bit more into evasion, hence the sizable deflection rating that can further help mitigate damage. If you wanted to lean more into the ES side instead, make sure to invest more points into the northern part of the passive tree and take some ES recharge star delay whenever you can. One final comment before we jump into the further improvement section of the build. Consistent critting is very important for both our mapping and bossing setup. Outside of the crit investment on trees, including blind nodes, make sure to slot in charge regulation as a spirit passive. To generate power charge consistently, we pair Culmination 2 and Aelith Chime with Wind Dancer passive. Wind Dancer gives you a stack for higher evasion rating up to a maximum of 3. When you get hit, you lose the stack but emit a damaging wave around you. This damaging wave can be improved with more combo due to culmination, and then can generate power charge as a result due to Aelith's Chime. So everything is automated. Every now and then, you'll run into a problem of not having power charge simply because you're killing packs before they can hit you, or avoiding obviously telegraphed boss moves. In that scenario, you might need to make sure you actually get hit once or twice on purpose for power charge generation. Now we can talk about some further improvements we can still make to this build. Keep in mind that this portion is going to be a little bit more unscripted, and life kind of got in the way, so since the start of the video to now, it's honestly been about another 1 to 2 weeks where I had a little bit more time to kind of make this build a little bit better. So let's go one step at a time. As previously mentioned, the earlier part of this video is a build that takes about 20 Divine or so to realize. The next big upgrade that I made between then and now, first of all, is upgrading my Amulet. So again, earlier, let me show you guys this one. I think I still have it. This was my earlier Amulet. It's, relatively good. You have 3 prefix, all for more defense. You have your +3 level to spell, with some mana regen and resist capping, and desensitization for your anoint, essentially. This is pretty good, and nothing wrong with this. But to take it one step further, I added another about 20 Divine of investment into this build, so it takes this total up to about 40, and got essentially an Absent Amulet. This is kind of like a new base that is introduced in 0.5 League, and you can get this with the Breach, kind of the tree mechanics if you want to play into that. Long story short, there's like a few different new base that gives you different spirit skills free of cost, but it takes away essentially your prefix or suffix modifier. This is kind of the one, this is the class of Amulet that gives you a bunch of overpowered 100 base spirit cost skills, Trinity being one of them, and only lets you have a total of 4 suffix. So this one I got off of the market for about 18 Divine, and I think this was like a craft base somebody else was trying to do, but they missed the fracture. If you try to get this for cast on crit, it's going to be more expensive, and I don't recommend that because our Soul Spring Eternal and some of the efficiency nodes already means that cast on crit is not going to cost 100 spirit anyways, right? But Trinity will cost you 100 spirit, so the fact that you move this onto the Amulet means that you're saving the most amount of spirit for other things that we'll talk about. Outside of kind of the implicit that gives us the Trinity that we need, this always, of course, still make sure that you have your +3 level of spells. This is super important. The attributes is honestly kind of a dud, but I only have like an extra 20 div to play around with, so this is what I ended up having to have. It originally also came with a T1 energy shield and a desecration. I think the desecration was honestly, the rarity is fine, but I would have preferred another defense. And this kind of global armor evasion energy shield, I just kind of crafted this with a perfect essence. I was actually hoping it to override the rarity, so I have like a T1 ES and this perfect prefix, but alas, right, it's what it is. So moving essentially the Trinity to the Amulet obviously opens up 100 spirit for us, right? And as a reminder, spirit for us does not come from prefix in the gear, but comes from some calculation of evasion to energy shield because we're taking the monk ascendancy. So just keep that in mind, right? The better of a chest you have, the more spirit you should have. So with 100 spirit saved, and keep in mind the previous setup, I had Trinity enabled for both weapon set 1 and 2. So saving 100 spirit is really significant, and the key thing that I wanted to optimize for, because we talked about mana having an issue, and I did not want to use Leech more than I needed to because it's really kind of a non-optimized, more of a bandit way of solving mana. I was essentially able to slot in Mana Remnant for both weapon set 1 and 2. If you're not familiar, description is there, but it really leans well into our build because the elemental build, we're going to be creating ailments on the enemies anyways, and we're going to be critting, effectively 100% of the time. So we are going to be spawning a lot of these remnants during mapping, which takes away the need for Osin's Oath and like kind of the leech setup that we have our ring. So if you look at our ring, I no longer have the suffix for for leech, and I no longer have Osin on my Ice Strike, and you can map just fine. The other really cool thing about Mana Remnant is actually it lets you slot in Catal's Rejuvenation. This essentially means that when you're picking up remnants such as the Mana Remnant, you also get a boost to cooldown reduction. Why is this so good? Well, remember how we talked about how Elemental Expression cooldown? There's a cooldown, so it can only trigger effectively about like 5 times a second, but you are attacking about 6.2 times a second, right? So even if you're critting all the time, you can't be triggering all the time. Well, in combat, if your cooldown is reduced, you will have more frequent trigger of Elemental Expression. So having Mana Remnant here not only solves your mana problem for mapping, it actually kind of increases your DPS overall, which is really nice. Unfortunately, having Mana Remnant does not solve mana issue for bossing, and that was kind of the key issue that we had. And the reason is simply because of this. There is a cap, right? Spawn Remnant on critically hitting a target affected by an elemental ailment no more than once every 2 seconds. This is going to be the scenario in which you are in terms of bossing, because because you're not killing the boss right until the very end. So this helps with the bossing a little bit, but frankly, like 300 mana every 2 seconds, that's not enough. Like, if you look at the footage, I think every 2 hits of Ice Strike, we're hitting 100% energy. So we are spawning like comets like crazy. So we really need a lot more mana that we'll talk about, right? And I realized I probably need to quality this. So that's the first big thing. The second big thing that I went ahead and got is, in addition to trying to solve mana, I was also trying to figure out how to make the damage just increase overall. And you realize now we are able to actually slot in Elemental Conflux. Again, because we saved 100 Spirit, Mana Remnant is 30, and that leaves 60 for Elemental Conflux, which is actually a great pairing with our Trinity. One thing about Trinity that, again, we already talked about how to balance it out, is that you will want to be a little bit mindful. Like, having Elemental Conflux up now sometimes messes with your Trinity a little bit. It doesn't kill it, but just FYI, you can kind of tune this again with stats in terms of Elemental Expression, or you want to put some Attunement's Gem, whatnot. It's all good, but you can definitely see right here, right? You can be a scenario where here Ice is being boosted, so your cold is the dominant type, so your Ice Strike is giving you cold. But if I go, this keep giving me cold, but if I run into like a Fire Conflux or something, I will have a scenario in which even for Ice Strike, Fire does more damage than cold. Then that becomes an issue, obviously, right? Because then most of my attacks are fire now, and I don't have like a dominant attack which gives me cold affinity, not resonance. Sorry. So just something to be mindful. Something like that, right? So you can see that even though the range, there's an overlap range, right? Cold can go as low as 646 and fire can go as high as 697, right? So this is already an overlap. So there will be a scenario in which you deal more fire than cold. So again, it kind of messes with the Trinity a little bit, just FYI. But it's definitely worth slotting in because the Conflux is insane, right? It gives you 68% more damage as is, rotates between 3 elements. You have all 3 different elements in your attack and or trigger anyway. So this is great, right? So no complaint, this is great. But again, because we have limited skill slot to slot in Elemental Conflux, we will need to swap our ring. I have like a Topaz ring. I need to swap this over to Onset ring. And one actually cool thing is that with the Flux introduced in this league, you can kind of, just kind of do whatever you need, right? To kind of match the lightning resistance. I had some fire or cold on this one. I just put the lightning flux or crackling flux, so now everything's lightning. And the cool thing is when you quality lightning, you get like a huge boost in terms of lightning resistance, which really kind of alleviate gearing pressure on other pieces. The final thing that I am working on right now, going back to like the mana issue that we have for bossing, I am really just trying to put mana wherever I can in terms of And I'm trying to go about this in the way of focusing on efficiency rather than regen, simply because our mana pool is not that much. If you don't know, base mana regen is 4% of your max mana, and all of the modifiers like increase or even more are kind of based on that. So, you know, if your base is kind of shit, then you can kind of put in a lot for mana regen, but you're not going to get a lot of good numbers out, right? So I'm really trying to go the other way by reducing costs, essentially. So, you know, you have idle here. One thing I'm trying to find like a better set of masks is that I think this league there is a crafting thing that gives you efficiency. I don't know if I have it here. Yeah, this one, right? On Helm, I think. Let's see. There you go. Helmet, 18 to 29% increased mana efficiency, expansive alloy. This is really good, but this goes on a prefix, so you're going to have to, you know, take a sacrifice on the ESEV. We also have kind of ring suffix. You can look this up on POE2 DB. Ring suffix that also kind of, you know, gives you more mana efficiency, which I don't have at the moment, right? Because I think I need to switch up my boot for more resistance, so I can kind of alleviate and shove in a few more suffix there. And yeah, and things like that, right? One last stretch goal that you can also do in terms of glove, which, you know, it's way too expensive at the moment, but let's just say Arcane Surge on crit. You are able to get kind of these gloves that rolls Arcane Surge on crit. You can desecrate this. Unfortunately, this is, I think, like a Kurgle desecration or something. Unfortunately, the issue is you cannot use Omen of Black-Blooded when you're trying to desecrate an armor. It only applies to jewels or weapons, so it's kind of shit. So you're really trying to roll in a much larger pool trying to get the suffix. This, I think, should definitely help in terms of mana regen. Arcane Surge is a more modifier, and it's just pretty good. And this, you can also try to get a glove where it both has this and projectile level. And let me go to here, but obviously it's going to be like super expensive. But for example, you know, something like that, right? This goes to 15 and this is already like a shit roll, but you know, like the defense, the prefix is pretty bad. So if you really want something good, it can go up to like 50 or even 100 diff, but something you're gonna, if you want to splurge on. The reason why we want projectile skill is actually, if you look very carefully, our elemental expression is a projectile skill, right? So you can have a scenario in which you get a pair of much better gloves than this, where you have significantly better mana regen and just better LE expression trigger, right? So if you look, the damage is kind of, you know, it's not, I am in my unarmed state, right? Level 24, 8K, 4K, 4K, which is not bad, to be frank, because I'm triggering this about 6 times a second, right? But this can go a lot higher. I mean, even if I switch over to Collapsing Horizon, this is like 20K, 11K, 11K, whatever. So again, it scales heavily with levels. So having +2 level to projectile skill will also help quite a bit. So that takes us to the end of this video. And as always, I really hope you've enjoyed this build from kind of like a power fantasy or even kind of lore implication perspective, as well as maybe from a build mechanics perspective, take something valuable away. Going forward in this league, this is going to be a pretty long league, and again, I really want to apologize. I do have a full-time job, and you know, we have a small child at home. So again, you know, I have to touch grass every now and then, unfortunately. But in the pipeline will definitely be an update to the Chopper Chapter, as well as a Chaos-inspired build. In fact, this Invoker build originally started as kind of our third iteration of the Fire Monk from last league. And originally, I really wanted to put in like kind of like a cast-on synergy, because one of the things that viewers pointed out previously is that we don't have fireballs for Liu Kang, and I kind of completely agree, right? Like, if I don't have fireball, can I really call him even Liu Kang? So I actually started with fireballs, and I kind of realized it's kind of trash, and then yada yada, different evolutions, and we essentially actually gotten something closer to Avatar than what we have for Liu Kang. So it's just kind of funny how things change, right? So I might, you know, revisit the more of a fire focus archetype, and you know, definitely Facebreaker with martial artists is kind of like a big one. I think people have been doing some great builds around that. So you know, the spirit here is really, I have limited time. And I really want to kind of provide more unique contents. And I know that a lot of kind of the other streamers will be able to make better builds than what I can do. So I'm really trying to fill that niche. But anyway, I really appreciate everyone's support and comments and feedback. I feel like I've, learned a lot of the game from interacting with y'all. And yeah, just, stay tuned and let me know what you think and maybe any other kind of archetype you'd like to see. Until next time. Cheers.